And welcome back to the Constitutionals Podcast. I'm your host, Chad White. If you didn't know, this is the premier podcast for the website, cpluscomedy.com. Like I just said, it's a website. Go there. Here we are doing yet another. I'm going to turn myself down here because I'm extremely loud and I can see myself peeking on Adobe Audition. Yeah, I pay the big bucks to use the best platform for the least listened to podcast. Bonus episode after 223. I don't know what number I'm going to use. I used a decimal system for these bonus episodes. One, because I think it's funny. Two, because I don't know what jokes are. Isn't the website called C Plus Comedy? Here we are talking to Latinx filmmaker Kristian Mercado. Now, this person is a director, is a producer, and has, I would say, a very strange mind. Now, hear me out. It's not an insult. If you look at his 2021 South by Southwest Festival short film, Nuevo Rico, just look at the trailer for that, and you'll go, oh boy, this is very bright and very weird and strange and out there. And it's great. And it stands out. And I enjoy it. The trailer, at least. Haven't seen the actual short film. But we'll see where that goes. Kristian, most recently, took on directing the HBO Max special, or HBO special. I don't know if it's on HBO Max. I mean, I know it's on HBO Max. I don't know if it aired on HBO, because these things are so synonymous with each other now. Phoebe Robinson, Sorry, Harriet Tubman. Now, Phoebe Robinson is one half of Two Dope Queens. I think that group disbanded about 7 years ago. But after having their own HBO specials, not HBO Max, but you can find them on there. Kristian directed this special, which released on October 14th, 2021 of this year. I don't know why I thought it was today. Kristian is a well-staged, well-crafted director when it comes to comedy specials. He is no stranger to them. In fact, he's done Hannibal Buress, Miami Nights, and you'll hear me in this interview. This is an interview, by the way. I don't know if I established that, but you'll hear me in this interview reference that one a lot because it sticks out in my mind. I don't watch a lot of stand up anymore, unless it's from somebody I super love, because now everybody and their mother's getting a stand up special. I'm not saying the people I love are getting them in alongside these other no names. But if someone's been doing stand up for 2 years, you don't need a special. Now Phoebe, she deserves a special. It's one of my favorites. So I've seen this one. Anyway, Miami Nights is a truly spectacular special that stands out for all of the post production, all of the zaniness that happens at the last part of it. And I believe Kristian produced that. I believe he produced the Phoebe one too. Don't take that. He's a director. Don't. If I'm getting this information wrong, I'm sorry. Also took on Ilana Glazer presents Comedy on Earth for Comedy Central, and London Hughes and Sam Jay's specials. There's also going to be a new special coming out. I'm reading as I say this out loud. With Anna, oh God, I can't find the name. This is embarrassing. I'm usually better than this. Anyway, Ada Rodriguez comedy specials coming to HBO Max later this year, and also you'll hear during the interview, just me drop in a little bit of info that was fed to me from his people. Breaking news. there's going to be another Michael Che special that Kristian may have directed. And let me just take the may out and say, yes, he did direct this. Kristian's also been in the music world, doing projects with Billie Eilish, Bad Bunny, De La Soul, and J Balvin, the Peach Kinds. Done music videos, like the one for Riff Raff. It won a jury award for Riff Raff's, Palante. I believe that's how I pronounce it. Won a jury award at South by Southwest Festival in 2019, which is the last South by Southwest Festival, if anybody asked me. No one did. I think there was one this year. I don't know. It was probably digital. Kristian is a delight, and I truly enjoyed my conversation with him. He knows a lot about directing and working with a comedian in particular in order to get and show and display what the intent of the joke is on screen, without it being without it ruining or his direction over encompassing the joke. What I took away from it is that he talks to them. He sits down, he talks to them, versus just going out there and going, I'm going to point some cameras at you. You're going to laugh. You're going to tell jokes and then they're going to laugh. The end. So he's good at what he does. Let's talk about Kristian's socials, because baby, that's all anybody needs. Kristian Mercado can be found, I would say, mostly on Instagram at Chris Merc, KRISMERC. And again, he's a wonderful director. You can just search on YouTube for his name. Also, go to his website, chrismerc.tv, to see a well-designed website. Don't know if he made it himself, but he's great. Also, Latinx. So support the people of color, the brown people, especially someone in such a good position in trying to help others and elevate their work. All right, this has been going on for way too long, so you can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at C+Comedy. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram at ChatBlackWhite. Like us on Facebook. Rate, review, subscribe to this podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, TuneIn, Amazon, the rest. If you want to see a video version of this interview, go to youtube.com/C+Comedy, where you can also see video versions of the regular podcast, as well as our premiere show, News Time, which is a weekly news show that's like the Daily Show, except way less funny. Weekly. I do it every single week. So check it out. Thank you. And now check this out. This interview with Kristian Mercado. I know you just dropped Phoebe's new thing. Phoebe's new special just came out, and it's good to see that. How was working with Phoebe? How's working with any comedian in the first place to get this made?
Oh yeah, I mean, it's like a collaborative process, I think, for the most part. Like, I think like a lot of, when a comic works on their set, it's like sometimes it could be like multiple years of work that go into that set, and like figuring it out, fine tuning it, taking it out, exploring it. And it's kind of like, it's also like a very personal piece of art, you know what I mean? Like that it's coming solely from that person. So like, I try to be really respectful of that process. And like, I don't know, I really like comedians, like, like I really like, laughing. And like, I know that sounds so simple, but it's kind of true, like there's something cool about, just enjoying like the comedy of something and then like laughing to, and like, I think if it makes you laugh, it makes you want to like engage with it, So like me personally, anytime I kind of like get to talk to a comedian about like their process or get to see kind of like them working a set, I feel like it's kind of like it's a vibe. I mean, I think what's interesting is when you see a set multiple times and then you can kind of see the craftsmanship of it, because sometimes people will see a set maybe once or something because they seen that comic once or something or twice, but like when you see it multiple times, you start to see like, oh wow, there's like craft behind this, you know. And so um yeah, I think the process is really kind of like trying to understand the voice of that comic and then like kind of filtering that into a cinematic language, or coming up with a way to kind of how do you present that material the best, you know. And like I think that's kind of like my take on it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I noticed you have a very distinct style when it comes to direction, or in any of the projects you worked with, like the Miami Nights. Miami Nights is
Yeah.
Hannibal Buress's latest special. I think that was the last thing he did
Yep.
thus far.
It was a last special, yeah.
And it's like it stands out in my mind for the what people would call overproducing or what have you. But man, it's such a good special. It's so funny, but it's also it's got a lot of jumping around and
Yeah.
moving parts that work really well. But then also your animated stuff is just like Adult Swim on cocaine. It just it does it. It's crazy what goes on in
Yeah.
your mind.
Oh no, totally. I think like Hannibal, that was my first special actually, which is crazy. And it was kind of Hannibal's idea. And the reason was because I had directed like this Cool Keith MF Doom music video that was like super like it was like super psychedelic and super like a specific vibe, but it looked crazy. Like I think when people saw it, it was just always like, oh, how did you make that? Like it was like a piece of work that like it made people ask the question, like, how do you do it? Like, and I always like that. If people have to ask the question, like, oh, how do you make that? That was like kind of like something I was into. And well, Hannibal, when he saw that, he had like a wild set that was very audio visually driven at the time, that he was kind of like, oh, like I need a screen and I need this and that. And like, this is, I saw it so many times. And it was kind of like figuring out like how to present all that material in a way that, you know, highlighted it. And so I kind of like, you know, I had to think through like, oh, well, we could do this type of thing and this type of thing, and you know, how to shoot them at the same time, like a screen and Hannibal. So there was like a lot of figuring out. It was like a pretty advanced, like as far as comedy specials go, it was like super advanced. Like it was like kind of like a big puzzle, but I was like super thrilled to kind of work that out, you know?
Mm-hmm. How did you find your voice as a person in the industry, as in the arts? Like, how did you decide this is who you're going to be when you're presenting whatever you're making?
I think like for a long time I was kind of like, I think an outsider, where like I didn't fit into the traditional like what the system was, or like I don't know if I took a traditional path really. Like I just kind of like followed my impulse, and like I would just make stuff I cared about, you know, like for the most part. And I think in that distinction, it kind of refined like my voice and my work to the point where like it started to become more singular and like more like its own thing, you know, because I wasn't really doing what other people were doing as much, you know, I was just doing my own thing, kind of almost outside systems as much as possible. And then eventually it kind of almost becomes like, oh, that's like its own thing. And then people start to seek it out, you know? So like, that's kind of where I'm at now, where like, I think people kind of associate like a certain like idea or style, or like understand a little bit of like, oh, like this is what you would get if you work with Chris, sort of. And I hope people are excited by that. I don't know. Like, I don't know.
I think all they need to do is take a look at your website, and then that's the excitement. If they're not excited by that, just the visual style of that thing, then I don't know what can help them at this point.
Oh, bless. I appreciate that. Yeah. I mean, I'm definitely trying.
Yeah. What's the dichotomy of working with musicians like SZA or Billie Eilish,
Yeah.
and then working with a comedian? Like, how do you find yourself switching gears between those types?
It's interesting because, like, I think part of what I brought to the comedy space was like kind of like the way that like music is kind of almost like a talent focused like art, you know what I mean? Like when you work on like anything that's like kind of got like a superstar talent like a SZA or a Billie Eilish, there is a level of expectation of like that the work has their voice in it too.
Mm-hmm.
And I think in comedy, I think comedians, depending on who they like work with or how it's being made, like I don't know how much they feel that's happening in the process of creating the visuals, you know what I mean? So like I kind of look at it like, oh yeah, like that's a piece of art that, you know, you worked on, so it should reflect you somehow, you know. But I don't know if everyone asks that question sometimes, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like just depends, you know. So I feel like I kind of brought in some of the sensibilities of like the things I learned from music into comedy. And you know, to be fair, I also do that back to the other way. So like if I work on like something that's like musically driven, so I think about the humor of it, or I think if about the timing of humor, you know, because humor, or even in my work with drama now, it's like also like because I still do drama too, like I use comedy as a template for timing because the timing for comedy is so like its own thing, you know, like, and it kind of like reveals information, and so like you can use that for a lot of things. I feel like it's really cool.
What were some of the growing pains that you learned in music and then also in comedy, just in directing in general? And how did you get past them at all?
Man, that's a good question. I think growing pains, I think like in general, like anytime you kind of assert this idea that you're gonna make something, it's like at the beginning, it's always like a little bit of a struggle to kind of because people need to see it to kind of believe it, you know. So you have to kind of make something out of nothing. And it takes kind of a couple, I think it takes years to kind of accumulate a body of work that represents like what your voice is. So that's its own struggle. And then I think like in comedy, the thing that I would say, you know, like is difficult is for people to kind of have a vision outside the box. Because I feel like so much of comedy is kind of I think there's sometimes a template for it and people kind of like rely on the template and like they don't really want to challenge it. And sometimes people in a very wrong fashion believe that, oh, like by challenging the template there that it's being done wrong, when that's not the case. It's just like just trying to elevate the work or think of it in a different way. Because like I think like for like even for stand-up, like the way it's shot, so many of the rules kind of come from the 80s, you know. So like it's this like, you know, cinematography, the way that the philosophy of shooting something, you know, all that stuff has changed over the years, you know, so that you don't really have to do it that way just because someone said that's the way it's done, you know. Like it should just reflect the modern sensibilities. And you could say that too for episodic stuff, sketch. Like there's a lot of ways that that applies, I think, throughout the world of comedy, you know. Like I think it's just good to kind of think of new ways to kind of approach it and add some flavor to it, you know.
Yeah, I always think it's better to push the envelope and fail, you know, fail at 100% rather than to be safe and you know you're going to succeed. It doesn't make sense to me, you know, just going through the same motions. It's you know that's you know basically what spawned this stupid website that I do. And you know, it's sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, and that's what you just have to go with.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think like, you know, taking big swings is cool because like you do find like little special things like, you know, Rami, I think is like a good example of a big swing that shows like so different. Or Atlanta, even Atlanta's got like you know, you could say that's like a drama comedy or like a fusion of things, you know, but like it takes a big swing, you know. And I think like whenever you take those big swings, it kind of like stands out, you know.
Yeah. And then I also wanted to mention that like the reason I really appreciate your work, even though I've only known you for a couple of like 2 weeks since I got this offer, but I do appreciate your work in this field because it's too often, you know, you hear that. I was just reading the Color of Change report that came out recently, and they talked about there's not a lot of Latinx
Oh
representation
yeah,
on
yeah, it's really
screen, and
rare.
yeah, and so this year it kind of, or the last television season, it kind of plateaued in front of and behind of the camera.
Yeah.
And you know the same thing has happened for Black people, for Asians, for women, for Native peoples,
Oh yeah, definitely.
and it's just like I always think, especially for people in your position who are directors or producers or editors or musicians or what have you, that aren't just, big name actors. It's 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 good that we can talk about that now, but also I think that the 2% of directors that are Latinx or are
Mhm.
the 7% that are women, I think that we need to elevate them to a status where they are recognized, where we can talk about them, but also at the same time say, hey, but we need to get some more in here to back them
Yeah.
up.
I think too, it's just like so much of it is systematic, like it's like you do feel like a little resistance sometimes, like you can feel like that resistance sometimes. Like it's almost like people do, I don't know how to describe it, but it's almost like this quiet, like uncomfortableness by just like occupying space, because people are so used to things being done a certain way. And then when you bring your perspective into it, or you're trying to, I think in some cases, sometimes you're just trying not to, because it's weird because mediocrity can be celebrated sometimes, you know what I mean? And I'll just be honest about it. Like, I think that idea of like the template, like if the template is mediocre, then like people kind of, almost champion the people who just like fit into the peg. But if you're like the squeaky wheel who's like kind of saying like, well, you know what? That's like not the best way to do it, and then everyone kind of sees you as the person who's doing it wrong because you're actually like kind of challenging the system that they built, you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
so they think it's like, oh, absurd. But then like if you make the result good, I feel like then the proof is in the pudding. And then like it's almost like everyone's got to like shut up a little bit afterwards, which is kind of like what happened, I think, with some of my work, where like I feel like I felt a little resistance sometimes systemically, depending on like who you ask, like there was just like this like energy of like, does he know what he's doing? Like, and it was kind of like, yeah, I know what I'm doing. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm just
Right.
trying to make it a little bit better, like, let me just fix some things. But it's crazy how that works. Yeah. And I think, yeah, we do need more like voices and more people. I think, there's a lot of, it's like, you just have to let more people into the system to kind of
Right.
like change the energy a little bit so that there's more like a diverse array of opinions and diverse array of ways of doing things, because it's not just like you're offering new perspectives, and then like I think by having those perspectives you can kind of make the work richer.
Mhm. Was there ever a concern when you did receive pushback? Was there ever
Uh-huh.
a concern that you were going down the wrong path, or that somebody would say, "All right, that's it, you're out, you can't do this anymore," or were you just did you have the courage? Definition of courage is still having fear behind it, but that's propelling you forward. So did you have that courage of still wanting to continue?
I think the way I was always looking at it is like, I think when people, and this is going to sound crazy, but I think when you have like an idea of a vision of like where the end goal is,
Mhm.
like sometimes it's like looking out, like it's like almost like there's a cloud, right? And like you can kind of peek outside the cloud and you can see beyond to the final goal, right? So
Mhm.
like when I was working on stuff, I always saw like the final results because I had the vision for it. Like I was like, oh yeah, like this is what I need to get to make this happen. So if I ever got like a little bit of pushback, I was like, oh, it's just that you don't understand where I'm aiming for. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like that's the kind of like the discrepancy. Cause like I think with certain like producers, like what ends up happening is it's a little bit of paint by numbers, you know what I mean? Like they're just kind of like, oh, I've done it this way 20 times. So
Right.
the one time it's done differently, it can kind of confuse them. And it's not like, you could do your best trying to explain it. Like you could be very like equitable, but like at the end of the day, I think you just have to trust your gut. Like at the end of the day, like if you know you're gonna get a good result, you should just
Yeah.
aim for that, and then like don't worry about the rest, like all that stuff is silly, like I think I'm more like results driven more than anything really. Like I feel like at the end of the day, if it's a dope special, if you elevated the craft, if you did right by the comic, I mean those are the most important things.
Yeah, it's the envelope. Yeah, definitely needs to be pushed. I was just listening to Dave Grohl on a couple of months ago. He was on Howard Stern, and he said, goes back to your peeking above the clouds comment. He said that what he did was, I'm basically just boiling it down. Like one day he would go home, get down on his knees and like look to the skies and like meditate and beg the universe to make him a rock star. And lo and behold, he's a rock star. I mean, that's kind of where you're pushing yourself, is becoming the rock star of directing. That sounds very cheesy.
Yeah.
But
it's like following your gut. Like you got to follow your instincts,
Yeah.
because your instincts kind of like tell you like a lot, like if you feel like, I feel like anytime I don't follow my instincts, I end up regretting it. Like, like if I don't just follow the impulse when I'm making something, like I'm just like, oh, like I should have followed that through more, So like, I think that does manifest itself into like a clearer path, like at least that for me, that's how it works, like I kind of know what I like, and like I trust that what I like, and I think for the most part, people kind of, especially even in comedy, would like, they like what I do. You know what I'm saying? Like they're like, oh, like that's so interesting, or like the perspective on that, like, or and I think that comes from like, I'm just like looking at comedy and like going, well, hey, like how can you make that more true to the art form?
I don't think you ever have to worry about not fitting in, because now it's like the people you've worked with, Hannibal, Alana, and Phoebe, even to an extent. It's just these are all just a bunch of outsiders now that have become the norm. It's fantastic that this even exists now.
Yeah, and I think that's a through line in a lot of my work for sure. Like I just love celebrating outsiders. Like I myself am an outsider, and like I feel like drawn to outsiders, and I think that comedy at its best is kind of a celebration of the outsider, So that's why I do like working with like Phoebe, Hannibal, like because they do have like that sensibility to them.
And how do you want to be celebrated?
Ha! I mean, I kind of low key. I like being low key, honestly, but like I do think that I mean, I'm kind of like working towards like feature work and like more narrative stuff right now, and I think that I even got a little Oscar buzz for like this short that I made, which is crazy. So I've been kind of like I feel like there's like a lot of validation that I've gotten from like just the work that I've done, and like I think the best thing that I could hope for is just that people like watch the work and feel something, like I think that's my favorite thing. Like if work could make you feel something, then that to me is like I've accomplished something, So like I think that's the most important thing really, and I think that leads to all the other stuff, like I don't have to stress about all the rest. It's just like, how do you make people feel something, whether it be a comedy special which can bring joy, or make people ask questions, about the absurdity of life, or whether it be like a short, that I've done where it's like, oh, that made me ask myself questions, like I just like making people feel something.
Yeah, and it's what you do. Definitely, I mean, I just watched the trailer to your short, and that definitely made me feel all out of sorts. So it's
Thanks.
yeah. I can't. I want to see. I want to see. I want to see it. I want to see the short. But I definitely hope that it brings you more work than you can possibly imagine. That's
Plus, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, yeah, we'll see what happens. I mean, we're working on figuring out how to make that a feature length too, and I'm sure that I'll bring some of the comedic sensibilities into it that I've learned in the timings, and like kind of like some of the goofiness of some of my work into it as well. So it'll be fun to kind of figure all that out.
Now, before I let you go, a little birdie told me that you do have a new special with Michael Che.
Oh yeah, I do. Yeah, 100%. I don't know. I don't even know if it's announced yet, but I think it's going to be announced soon. So yeah,
it just did. Yeah.
Oh, it did? Really? Oh, damn. I didn't even know. Yeah. I just did Michael Shea's new hour. I think is the title released as well, Anna?
Yes.
Oh, Shame the Devil. Yeah. It's really, really great, actually. I'm excited about it, man. It's such a true, like, it's got the taste, like the sensibility of a classic,
Hmm.
like we were like the way we shot it. I feel like it was like very like, oh, like let's make it like, true comedy, like in this kind of classic sense where I feel like I'm really proud of it. Like I'm excited. And I think the hour that Shay did was really, really cool. So like, yeah, I can't wait for people to see it. I think it's also his first special in what, like 5 years, I think, right?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, because the last one was with Netflix, correct? Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's been a while since he's done an hour. So yeah, it's gonna be exciting to see that out there.
Yeah, especially after he's got so much. I don't want to say clout, but clout for the past couple of years of SNL and even the stand up stuff that he's been popping up here and there.
Yeah, no, he's a great stand-up. Like his style, his voice, it's just really smart. It's like funny, smart, layered. Yeah, he's like a unique, very unique voice, man. And he's also like a city guy. So like, like I feel like I grew up in the city, he grew up in the city. So I was like, I instantly kind of like relate to that. I feel like whenever I meet somebody that's kind of like, oh yeah, like you got the NYC energy to you.
Did you meet him for the first time making that special?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. We met. No, actually, no. We met when I had directed Sam Jay's special, actually.
Oh
So
wow.
like I met him there briefly, and like I think like after Sam Jay's special, I think like I did meet and talk to a lot of comics because I feel like Sam Jay's special and Sam Jay specifically too. It's kind of like a comics comic. You know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
Like yeah, like Sam Jay is like one of, I mean, she's a badass. She's so good. And I really love that special too, like, I mean, I'm always trying to like make the specials that I do like speak to the person that they are, so like they're like, oh, this is this person's special. This is this person. Like I want them to be able to own it, like it's like theirs and singular, like so like similar to their voice, like a comic's voice is only their voice. I
Mhm.
want the visuals to also be only theirs.
And yeah, and that's where that's why Hannibal sticks out in my mind. Phoebe's is just really well done. I don't know how. I think for me that would take a lot of conversation to make that work. But for you, I think obviously you can have that conversation, but then pretty much suggest things that can help out that person to make their voice be seen as opposed to just being heard.
100%. Yeah. Because I think it does help if you're like seeing, I mean, there's so many stand-up specials a year, right? And like
Yeah.
if your special can kind of like stand out just a little, even a little bit, it's like, oh, I have to pay attention a little bit.
Mhm.
Or it makes the audience like stop for a moment and go, oh, what's happening there? And then hopefully what happens is that they listen to the words. And I think that's kind of part of it, I think.
Do you ever worry about having to one up yourself with each consecutive special?
Yeah, I mean, definitely.
Mm.
Definitely. I feel like it is kind of like one of those things where like I think it's also like working with people who want to push as well, or like want to try things, or like are interested in ideas, or like have something to say. And I think but I think there's so many like ways to approach the material. Like I think there's also something nice about the like a reserved special too. Like I think Shez is kind of like more like reserved, but it has like a cinematic quality that's like it just feels like good. Like I think people will be excited by it. But like I think yeah, there is like something about like I mean there's always I think it's good to be nervous. Like I'll be like, oh, like what can I do next? Or like who will I work with next to kind of like make something cool, with, and it's actually kind of exciting too.
When did I think this is just a real behind the scenes question for me. But I want to know, when did you lock picture for this for Chase special at least? How long until like you shoot it and then editing and then it's finished?
I think we edited that one for like about a month
Mm.
on and off. And, obviously like Trey's busy because like when SNL is like active, it's like, it's hard to, it's going to be hard to like take an hour to watch a screening of the special. So like, yeah, it was like a kind of like a process. But I think, like in general, I kind of like try to take at least a month to work on them, like that feels like a good, healthy kind of post like time for like a special, like you work on the hour, you get the nice clean edit, you kind of flow based on the material. Yeah, I would say like about a month roughly. Just depends, Hannibal's took a little bit longer because Hannibal's had like a long, like I had so much post process to
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
So that was a little more like intricate in how we approached it. I feel like Phoebe's was like a month too. So like in general, I've been hitting like a month on some of them, yeah, on the post side of things.
I miss the days before Netflix when it was just like 7 or 8 specials would come out, and it was cut
Yeah,
between Comedy Central and HBO, and sometimes Showtime. And
right.
you were so excited to see them, and now I can only watch the people that I care about. You know, Michael, Phoebe, Hannibal, Sam. I only care about them and not Skippy McGee over there.
I kind of feel that. I mean, I think there's like the I guess the beauty of it is that there's options, like people can be like, oh, like find the comic. Or I do think there should like we probably need like more platforms, or not more platforms, but maybe more like trying to find the new voices too, you know what I mean? Like sometimes it's like I'm always curious like if there's a better way to showcase new talent, that I don't know if anyone's figured it out quite yet. Like I feel like maybe Comedy Central, when they do their kind of type fives or like their like quick hits, that
Yeah.
can kind of be a discovery platform. But I think Netflix could, it'd be cool if they had like a version of that as well.
Yeah, they have some of their like, but they canceled those types of shows so often. Netflix had, sorry, excuse me, Netflix. Tiffany Haddish had one on
Oh, right.
Netflix, and then they had they also had one that had like Nicole Byer and a bunch of other people under that series of shows, but then that was canceled. So I want more voices
Yeah.
out there right now.
Yeah, because there's a lot of cool like people in the alt comedy scene. So I would love to see some of them kind of like they don't need to have full specials, but like
Right.
just like a showcase.
Yeah. 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 Anyway, I don't want to take up too much of your time,
Oh,
Chris.
this is great.
This is fantastic. I can't like this is definitely one of my favorite interviews of the year.
Oh, thanks, man. I appreciate that. I can't wait
Yeah.
to see it. Thanks, man.
Yeah, and congratulations on all of the success. And I wish for many more decades of it, features, television, and everything in between.
Well, yeah, I hope so, man. Hopefully see you soon, man.